Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. What if technology is not actually bringing us closer, but slowly leaving people behind? In this conversation, we explore why simple solutions often work better than complex ones, why a lot of AI creates more noise than value, and why real innovations should focus on solving human problems, especially for the older generations, who are often overlooked. My guest today, Matt Smith, is not just building technology, he's rethinking how it should connect people. As a co-founder of Speak2, he's focused on helping families stay connected across generations through simple, easy-to-use tool. He's also a strong voice on ethical AI, challenging how technology should be built to truly serve people, not exclude them. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for joining us today.
Great. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
But let's start simply a question. What problem are you truly trying to solve with Speak2 beyond the technology itself?
So Speak2 is trying to solve the problem of what people go through when they age in our society. So, especially here in the United States, people are very much consumers. Most of our value, most of our self-determination, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is we're consuming content, we're consuming services, we're consuming products, and we're interacting with each other based on being some level of a consumer. Consumerism and being a consumer can sometimes have a negative connotation, but in the context that we're using it, it's really just participating in society. So as people age, they become less and less part of the consumer ecosystem for many reasons. One is products typically don't target people as they age. It's not the core demographic, but we do so much through our phones. We act as consumers through technology that as people age, and especially people who are already in a demographic of aging, you become less of a consumer. So what Speak2 does is we provide a marketplace that allows for people who, as they age, to remain a consumer, whether that's, things that are external to them, getting a ride, getting products, getting services that they just need to order, or it might be within a contained society or community. So they might be in an assisted living community or an independent living community where they have people who are caring for them. And that could be family or care staff, nursing staff, to have those people have the opportunity to manage a marketplace for them. What services should be available to everybody and how do they consume them? And we make it very accessible. So while we are a software company, our real mission is to provide that self-determination and that self-worth throughout the entire aging process.
Yeah, I think this is a compelling vision that you have, and I really appreciate what you're doing. It's really something I'll raise. I don't have a hat, but I will raise it anyway here. That you're doing something very useful. Because one of the challenges, of course, is that with all these applications, apps they're being updated continuously, and it becomes more and more difficult, and it's really left for the person who uses. I mean, if a person is actively on mobile phones or with the apps, they kind of figure out where is the update doing now, and then of course there's plenty of text of what is being happening. But also there seems to be some of the apps are just for the sake of updating. They just change the place of a feature, and then if you don't know what to look for, it's kind of overwhelming. So then you go to YouTube, try to look for a tutorial, and then you have this one guy who's trying to sell you something in this same time. And I think it's I've been using apps for quite a long time, and I'm starting to feel that. I said, why did they do this update again? What is the practical purpose of this? And tell me your comment about how you feel about that.
Yeah, I echo all your sentiments. It's not only are products not designed for people with maybe visual impairments, but as people age, it becomes harder to tap and swipe on, and the updates that are made are often made for the sake of just making an update, just making a change. I have an iPhone that got updated with the latest keyboard, and it's not better. It's It's actually, in my opinion, worse. But I think that a lot of times companies feel like they need to innovate, especially on the software side. It's like we need to come out with our new version of our app or take advantage of the latest user interface, standards and best practices. And they don't necessarily take the moment to evaluate, is this actually making my product better? Is it making it more usable? Am I expanding my user base and my market segment, or am I now limiting some people from actually having access? It just seems like there's a constant rebuild of user interfaces on all apps that just need to be considered whether they're valuable. And I think it's great. We all want to improve our user interfaces, but we tend to design them for younger people. And uh, the screens are getting bigger, but there's more on them. When do I swipe versus tap? And there can be a feature that could be completely hidden because it's not obvious on the screen. For our demographic, especially, they didn't grow up with apps. They didn't grow up with smartphones. So for a lot of our customers, they may have used apps to some extent, but if you make a quick change, or if you every 6 months you're changing it, that will discourage our demographic from using the app or continuing to use the app. And then they get made to feel sort of vulnerable, as if they can't do it. And, I think, some of us, if something doesn't work, I'll figure it out. Like you said, you go on YouTube and you get all this nonsense sent your way. Think about trying to do that if you're 85 and, you don't have a lot of people around to help, and you just feel like, oh, now I can't get what I used to be able to get, all because what I'm looking at has just changed for some reason. And usually it's adding more and making things smaller and more confusing. Yeah, I feel pretty passionately that from a user interface, from a user experience perspective, people should definitely consider all demographics that are using their app and be very careful and cautious and thoughtful about why they're making updates and how it's going to impact all of their audiences.
Sure. In our previous discussion, you mentioned your mother was a catalyst. How did that personal moment reshape the way you think about technology and its role in people's lives? And you have, of course, partly answered it already, but I think the whole thing about the story and about your mother and what you have done for her.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my mom is, she's older and she suffers from macular degeneration. So visually, she's not going to pick up an iPhone or even a tablet. Is really difficult for her to see. She needs a magnifying glass to read a book. Um, historically, my family, my mother was the hub of communication. So I have three older brothers. Grown men don't typically call each other and talk on the phone all night. So we would call our mom and talk to her. And I would learn about everything in the family by calling her. But, back, I guess, 2007, 2008, 2009, smartphones, everyone started to have them. And over the years, we just started to text. And as a result, we were learning a lot about each other and communicating without my mother involved. So she became isolated. And at the time, I didn't realize that this was a common problem for people as they age. Just like anyone else, you don't really think about it until it's hitting you. There's not a lot of empathy for the aging process because it's just not talked about a lot, at least here in the United States. So, there was a solution sitting out there through smart devices and voice driven devices. So we built a little pilot. It was a way for her to send and receive text messages on an Alexa device. Amazon came out with something called Alexa Smart Properties, which allowed developers to use their APIs to build a smart device app. So that was the first thing to do, was to try to just get my mother to be able to text. She also has 13 grandchildren, and they just they're actually great. They do call because they know that that's her best form of communication, but they'd rather text. So she's able to basically text, send and receive using her voice. And then that blossomed into, what else should we do? We looked at the industry and we saw a lot of software that maybe was based on, historical or legacy technology. And being an entrepreneur and having other companies in the past, I saw an opportunity We reached out to some software development partners. None of them really worked out. So I said, you know what? Let's just do this ourselves. And I have a co-founder, Jillian Guerra. So once we put our heads together and said, let's turn this into a company, it took off from there. Because if my mom from the Bronx is going to use Alexa to text, I'm pretty sure, almost anybody would also engage with it. And it turned out we were right.
Very good. It's excellent. So when you step back, what is the deeper human issue behind digital exclusion that most people still don't fully understand?
Yeah, I think the aging experience is often treated as someone becoming a patient as opposed to remaining a consumer. And I know I already spoke about that earlier, but that's the part that I think people don't get is we have technology that is very much built or can be built for people with all sorts of accessibility challenges. And it's not just aging adults. I mean, it could be younger people who have, maybe motor skills or, sight impairment. There's a lot of things that are ambient technology, smart technology, whether it's apps, sensors, there's all sorts of things that can help with people on their life journey. And I think, especially again here in the States, we look at someone as soon as they have any kind of impairment that now they are a patient and we sort of treat them as being a little bit on the fringe or marginalized from what the quote unquote rest of us are doing. And I think it's a mistake because the things that bring value to each other are our connectivity, the wisdom that people gain over a lifetime, their human connection. That, someone doesn't suddenly lose all that value because they can't see as well or because they can't tap and swipe on a phone. I think we're missing the idea that we need to keep, especially our aging adults, we need to keep them front and center because there's so much to learn from them. There's so much value in connecting what they bring to the table to the people who are walking around staring at their phone all day that I think a lot of companies are missing that. And of course, we're in the field. So we feel like, well, yeah, there's a lot of people in this space, but I'm talking about things like banks and insurance companies, grocery stores. People aren't designing for that demographic. And I think that that's a big miss. People should be designing for that demographic and keeping it in mind. It's a big demographic. In the United States, it happens to be a pretty wealthy demographic. And I do see it changing in some ways, but I think people are missing that human aspect of building their products.
Yeah, I mean, there is quite a bit of discussion about these things in Finland and or in the Nordics for that matter. And now banks are realizing that they cannot ignore a population where the aging population is becoming actually majority of the population. So now they have separate services or separate numbers where you can dial in to have somebody who will take their time to explain in everyday language how to use the service and also to the answer in a friendly way how to resolve an issue there may be with a bank. But also I noticed that there are various service centers been around now in Helsinki for a while where they have different, besides the little bit of exercise and so on, but also they have opportunity to learn the basics about using devices. And that kind of help all that. What you mentioned is a little bit of a dilemma in many countries is that they try to make that easier. But I still know that I hear the stories about somebody saying, well, they're still try to write by hand on a paper what they need from the bank, and they're trying to get to the bank and get that service, but there's no one to receive that piece of paper. So, there are many kind of issues, but I think that what you're doing is quite of enormous thing, realizing what you have from your uh, personal experience and how you're trying to help. And I can see there's really a future in the kind of solution you're providing. But you've been outspoken about AI. Are we overestimating its value and underestimating its consequences?
Yeah. It's a great topic. I don't know that we're overestimating the value. I think we're still trying to figure it out to some extent. I do see that, I mean, we're using AI at Speak to. I think the problem that we're currently encountering is everything is trying to incorporate AI. even in places where it's just not necessary. So it almost seems like, every software company, every startup, you know, everywhere you turn, there's an AI summary of whatever you're doing. Like a conversation like this, we're doing a podcast and sure, it'll send you the AI summary of what you talked about. And it almost attracts, well, if I'm just going to get an AI summary for everything, then what am I participating in? Like I have, I'm always they're trying to sell me tools all the time to clear my inbox, to take care of emails for me. And I know that personally, I wouldn't want to get 20 emails in a day that I thought came from a person, but they actually just came from an AI bot that responded for that person. Because it means that person didn't actually respond to my email. Things like, we use Zoom, and at the end of every Zoom, it's like, hey, let me tell you about your meeting. There's a whole other ethical part of it, which is that takes a lot of power and a lot of water and a lot of energy, in general, to power all of this AI where, maybe 50% of it, I don't know what it could be 70%, it could be 20%, might be just unnecessary. All those AI summaries, I look at my news feed and it gives me a little summary of the news article at the top. Is that really necessary? And I get the value proposition as well. Maybe you won't read the article. If you read the summary, you might find that it's not interesting. But I think I could also tell that after reading up the first few sentences. So I think there's a lot of potential with AI where summaries can be really important. I think it'd be great to have summaries of someone's wellness. Is someone at risk of falling? Is someone at risk of, not getting the right nutrition? I think those kinds of summaries can be really, really powerful. But I think there's another side of it, which seems like we're getting a lot of frivolous AI. And from an ethical perspective, what's the point? It's expensive. It's being given to people for free right now. Everywhere you turn, there's just AI available. Even the subscriptions for the popular brands are pretty cheap compared to what it actually costs. So I think we're going to run into some sort of wall at some point where we're going to have to kind of dial some of this back. And I also think we just lose some of that human connection. I mean, like I said about emails,
Yeah.
if I think
So
I'm talking to someone, I don't want to be talking to a bot. I want to be talking to a person.
yeah, yeah. So what is your opinion about responsibility do leaders have today to ensure technology strengthens human connection instead of replacing it?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are no guardrails right now. The AI companies and really all the tech companies, especially here in the States, they just have free reign. They're doing whatever they want. There was just a case recently about, harming children, and they lost the case, but the amount of money that they lost is, frivolous to them, totally inconsequential. So uh, I think the problem is that there are no guardrails on what should be put in place. How do we measure it? How do we measure the impact on many aspects of our society? I mean, absolutely, it's impacting people, it's impacting the workforce, it's impacting finances, it's impacting the ecology, the environment. None of that seems to be measured right now. And I think, from my perspective, like anything else in life, we try to just do what we think is the right thing. So at Speak 2, we look at it like, where should we be using AI and where is it not necessary? When we build our model, we have to ensure that, we're not heavily biased. The AI models have a lot of bias built into them because they're based on biased material. So, encountering bias and identifying it and making sure it doesn't negatively affect the users is really important. So it really starts back, even the decision to use it. But then when the model is being built, is there bias built into it? Is this effective? Is it safe? What information am I collecting? Where is that being leaked to, right? You want to have a very secure environment. It's very easy to just skip that step and say, well, AI is just going to learn everything anyway. Well, you can put safeguards in place. And then you get to the user part of it, the summaries and things like that. Those are typically pretty effective right now. The LLMs are able to, the generative AI is pretty benign. it's the underlying models that are not benign right now.
Yeah,
So that's what we're doing. We're just trying to lead by example.
very good. So that leads me to a real question about the philosophy. If you could give one principle to every product designer building it for the future, what would it be, and why are they current missing it?
So I thought about this from our initial conversation. So I think that it goes beyond product design, but I think the general concept is empathy. And, if you have empathy, you can apply kindness to whatever you're doing. I think having empathy for the product users, whether it's the buyer or the user, whoever's in your ecosystem, if you come to the table with empathy, you are likely to build things that are helping people and will have some practical usage. Without empathy, you build things that are not practical because you're not thinking about anybody using it. You're just thinking of building something for the sake of building technology. So I think probably the best quality for a product designer, a product owner, a product manager is empathy. It's a little bit soft and like, well, how do I, why I can't read a book about how to build a product with empathy. But I think it's the most important quality, even though it's not necessarily popular or something that you can outline or build into your process. But I think people should start considering it a lot more with their product development.
Yeah. So you've been doing this development, or you have about 20 years of experience, if I'm not mistaken. What belief about leadership did you have early on that you now fundamentally totally disagree with?
Yeah. Um, Probably the same thing as the product. I think
Yeah.
early on, I thought being the smartest person in the room was the most important thing. And I was by no means the smartest person in the room, but I like to act like I was. So I would over prepare. I would over research. It probably benefited me to some extent, but as a result, I didn't listen enough and I didn't learn as much as I should have because I was too busy trying to be, the brash younger, person who knows is, a step ahead of everybody. And I think it took me a while to realize that you you need to do research. You need to be smart. You need to be prepared, but you also need to listen because everyone in the room is smart and everyone in the room is bringing something to the table. And if your only goal is to show everybody how smart you are, or how valuable you are, basically making it self-reflective. If you're making it all about yourself, you're never going to be a leader. No one's going to look at you as a leader because they're going to see through that. And I think when I started to put other people first and really just to listen, then people just started treating me like a leader. And it was a revelation. It was one of those, Zen, the less I tried, the better it got. And hopefully now I'm doing that. I think we always have to check ourselves, from
Yeah.
our childhood trauma drives certain behaviors, But yeah, I think listening and being part of the team is way better than just trying to show everybody that you're the most valuable person there.
Yeah. But part of it has also been the kind of pressure we have when we are younger to prove our worth. And the expectation is that you have to show off certain qualities, and I mean, I had the same thing, like what you were talking about. Rather than listening, I was preparing for how I'm going to counteract somebody's argument, or I was preparing myself for the next point and so on, rather than having sort of a friendly discussion and agree to disagree, but at least you have something valuable to bounce off with somebody else. So, I mean, I think many of us have gone through exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah. And that's also why it's so important to have connectivity between different peoples of different ages because, I wish that I had someone telling me more of that. But at the time, I did have people who were more experienced kind of point those types of things out to me. And as we become more disconnected, we're not working in the same location. We're not necessarily having lunch with our manager or someone who's 20, 30 years older than us. You don't get those little moments of wisdom shared with you. Because I think that's what woke me up was a more experienced person that I admired telling me, "Hey, you need to listen a little more." I mean, I've even had that recently where people say, You might benefit from listening a little bit more in that situation. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are actually talking about similar things in my every question is something that you have perhaps already answered, but I thought I'd still ask you anyway. Do you think we're becoming more connected or more isolated? And what role has technology played in that shift? And maybe you've been touching it all, but it would be good to
Yeah.
kind of focus on that point.
Yeah. It's such a, I think it's such a fascinating topic because I think technology is presented as creating more connectivity, right? Like, the telephone, the old telephone's plugged into the wall. Oh, now I can talk to people more, right? But I think in some ways we have more paths to connection, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're more connected. I think there's an anonymity, if that's the right word. It's capable of being very anonymous while expressing ourselves, especially with social media, right? I can be anonymous on Reddit. I can create a username and go out on Discord, and that personal responsibility that I need to represent myself with what I say and how I connect to people. There's a path to not doing that. There's a path to expressing myself with no connectivity. And I think that technology has enabled a lot of people to disconnect from the real deep value of connectivity. But on the surface level, they feel like they're still very connected to everyone. And I think that's the danger of what's happened. When social media was first being introduced to the market, I remember having a conversation with my mother actually, and she said, "This is terrible." I mean, she was adamantly, this is really bad. And I gave her this big speech about, well, people need to be able to communicate and the cream will rise to the top. And if we have a platform that everybody can communicate with and present themselves, then, it'll police itself just like society does, now, right? Or this was back then. And I'll have to say she was right. It's created a really bad situation with, fake identities, abuse, just there's a lot of negativity around social media, especially the algorithms that are rage baiting and just making everybody, you know, they get more money for people being mad at each other and angry than they do in bringing people together. And
Yeah,
I guess bringing people together is boring, but uh, that's where we're at right now. And I'm really hoping that these things change because the potential is tremendous. We're talking. We met. You're in Europe. I'm here in New York. I mean, it's amazing. We found each other. We're talking. We're sharing ideas. That's not possible without all the technology we have. But at the same time, there might be 10 people telling each other how much they hate each other using the same technology. So
yeah,
I hope that we mature as a society so that we catch up and that the human part of technology actually makes it connectedness in a positive way as opposed to just connected in a negative way.
yeah. I mean, you're doing the right thing, and then I hope that the Speak too can actually grow in a way that you can continue to talk about those things that you're passionate about. I mean, considering that you can grow in scale, what kind of world do you hope it helps to create? I mean, you already answered it, but say it again. And what would it be different about how people experience everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, we're just hoping to get as much reach. I mean, our focus is on aging adults. The more people we can get to, the more people we're bringing together. Some things that we're doing that aren't our technology are just sort of a celebration of kindness and people working together. We're doing things like we're creating a little book for the care staff, for the people who work in communities, just to thank them. We're creating things for the residents. We're creating things for the families. And it's all with the intention of just connecting people. So right now we're a pretty small company. Hopefully that the more people we reach, the more connected people are. And I mean, we hear it just on a daily basis, someone being happy because they're hearing from more people in their family or whatever. Or now I can just ask for, I need a ride to my religious services on Friday. I can just ask for that now. And I know when someone's coming and I'm not nervous and I feel confident. So we just want to grow that. And all that positive energy, we're hoping just sort of spreads naturally.
Very good. So people who are interested to find out more about Speak To, how can they do so? How can they reach out to you, and how can they reach out to the company?
Yeah, I mean, if you just Google search "speak to," it's on my shirt. Speak with the number two. You'll probably find us. Our website is speak2family.com. So speak with the number two family.com. If you go there, you'll see all about us. You'll find my partner Jillian and me on the site with some of our other team, and you can always get in touch with us. I'm with the name Matt Smith. I'm a little hard to find if you just try to find me directly, which I think might be a good thing. But if you first search for Speak To and Matt Smith, you'll definitely find me.
Terrific. So, Matt, I really appreciate that you're joining today episode, and all the value you've been giving, and a lot of sort of food for thought, I would say. And so thanks for all the fantastic insight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you for tuning into the Social Hotelier. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. We have an incredible lineup of guests coming your way. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care and keep exploring. So, we have now time for what I call off the mic. The idea is that we know Matt now from what you've shared about the company that you partly found, and about Speak To, and the story how it gets started, and all the good things that you're doing. But we try to find out a little bit more about Matt, a little bit about the person behind the persona. My first question is: if your younger self, the early New Yorker entrepreneur, met you today, what would surprise him the most about who you become?
That's a good one. I think that without getting emotional about it, the younger part of me or the younger self, maybe when I was in my 20s, I think that person would be pretty impressed and pretty satisfied that things have worked out the way that they did. I think I was really searching back then for a purpose, and you know, I didn't necessarily feel like I was on a good path, and even in my early professional career, I was really not sure what I wanted to do. So I think that that person would look at me and say, okay, that's pretty cool. Are you doing something you like? You're actually helping people. You're proud of what you're doing. You've built some great relationships. So, knock wood, everything's good. So I think that person would be proud of where I'm at.
What's one piece of technology you secretly wish would disappear tomorrow?
Truth Social, and I'd be political. I think I don't blame the technology. I don't think there's any technology that we have that's sort of at fault, you know. I think it's the way people manipulate it and use it. Or you liken it back to, when people were building tools and say, "Oh man, I wish they didn't build, an electric saw, or chainsaw," right? I liked it better when I just used the hand, you know, things just get better over time. And technology has just been like that. So I don't think there's any one technology that I would get rid of. I would certainly get rid of some implementations of technology. I think Facebook, the algorithm is not good. It used to be fun. When I first got on Facebook, I was really seeing my friends and we were truly posting things that were interesting about my ecosystem. And it's not like that at all anymore. And I think most of social media has gotten like that. It's been commercialized to a level where it's not fun or interesting anymore. So yeah, I'd probably get rid of some of the implementations of social media, and I think I might try to slow down some of the AI stuff, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm a technology advocate. I think technology is fantastic. It just needs to be used the right way.
So, if Speak To had a personality as a person, how would you describe it in 3 words?
Always spreading kindness.
There you go. You don't have to think long. Very good. What's a small everyday moment that instantly reminds you why you're doing this work?
There's always an email or a text like every day from a customer saying thank you. I'm thinking just back on Friday, I was going back and forth. We're very free about giving our phone number so our customers can text us. And I had someone thank me on Friday, uh, for doing what we do. It's incredible because, I've done a lot of things in the past and I was doing maybe good work or interesting work or being effective, but no one was really thanking me because it was like, hey, nice job. That's very different than a human being who really is genuinely thankful. So that's it right there.
Very good. So what do you do when you switch off from building all this technology and talking with customers?
Yeah. Well, I don't switch off much, to be honest, probably to a fault, but I have some hobbies. I have kids, so that's pretty much the biggest focus I have outside of work. I play music. I was a music student in university. I stopped for a really long time, but recently over the last year or two, I've picked it back up and I'm just getting little gigs here in New York, just playing my acoustic guitar and singing. So that's my new hobby to kind of clear my mind is music.
That's great. I mean, I'm like you. I played acoustic guitar for many, many years. Actually, I started very young because I found that a very good way to meet girls
Yes.
at the time, or around the kind of the bonfire or so on, while we're making pancakes and so on. So I was the singer and with the guitar and
Yeah.
took all the requests. But
Yeah.
I played for a while doing things like when I was working in the hotel, we had a staff party every year. And the staff found out that I enjoyed playing the guitar. They could probably sometimes heard that I was practicing. So I usually played one song for them every year. And that was sort of very nerve-wracking. I had to practice 3 months in advance because I want to be very, very nice. But what saved me was at the hotel, we had a house band of top professionals. So they covered me
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in many ways the sound was very, very good.
Smart. You set yourself up for success with the band. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
but I can appreciate that. I realize that when you kind of lose myself when I play guitar, in a way that kind of anything that kind of bothers me that goes away. And also, I think it has some impact when you touch your fingertips on the strings. I think that has a impact on your system also.
Yeah. I think it was I'm sure many people have said this, but I know Prince, the musician Prince said in an interview that there's nothing better than creating music. There's nothing better in life than that feeling. And I agree with it. I mean, I get very proud of the technology and all that, but sometimes when I'm sitting and I'm playing, you get a very sort of zen in the moment feeling. And it's a great release from all of the things going on. So I agree. Because it's also physical, which I think is really important to have some sort of connection to your body and your nervous system.
Well, that's great. I mean, this is my favorite part of the discussing, meeting people is to have these conversations where we really just realize we both love playing guitars. That's already one of those things.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All
I don't
right.
know if you I don't know if you can hear the do you hear the sirens in the background?
It's New York, right?
Yeah. So there you go. So a little experience of being in New York is you don't get by in an hour without hearing some sirens outside your
Yeah.
window.